Good morning, it's Thursday and welcome to Penn Vicarage. Lovely to see you this morning. Hope you're well and cheerful and hope you are enjoying whatever you're doing or eating whatever it is you're doing at the moment. May God bless you and good to see you today. Well, my friends, we're working our way through 1 Corinthians and I think I've earned my stipend the last few days. We've had some controversial issues. We've looked at women wearing hats in church, homosexuality. We've looked at the doctrine of the Eucharist. Today, it's another controversial one this morning. It's the gift of tongues, and amongst other things. So anyway, without further ado, here we go. 1 Corinthians chapter 14. I'm going to read you verses 1 to 19. Here goes. Paul writes, "Pursue love and strive for the spiritual gifts, and especially that you may prophesy. For those who speak in a tongue do not speak to other people but to God. For nobody understands them, since they are speaking mysteries in the Spirit. On the other hand, those who prophesy speak to other people for their upbuilding and encouragement and consolation. Those who speak in a tongue build up themselves, but those who prophesy build up the church. Now I would like all of you to speak in tongues, but even more to prophesy. One who prophesies is greater than the one who speaks in tongues, unless someone interprets, so that the church may be built up. Now, brothers and sisters, if I come to you speaking in tongues, how will I benefit you unless I speak to you in some revelation or knowledge or prophesy or teaching? It's in the same way with lifeless instruments that produce sound, such as the lute, flute and the harp. If they do not give distinct notes, how will anyone know what's being played? And if the bugle gives an indistinct sound, who will get ready for battle? So with yourselves, if in a tongue you utter speech that's not intelligible, how will you know what's being said? For you will be speaking into the air. There are doubtless different sounds in the world, and nothing is without sound. If then I do not know the meaning of a sound, I'll be a foreigner to the speaker, and a speaker a foreigner to me. So with yourselves, since you are eager for spiritual gifts, strive to excel in them for building up the church. Therefore, one who speaks in the tongue should pray for the power to interpret. For if I pray in a tongue, my spirit prays, but my mind is unproductive. What should I do then? I'll pray with the spirit, but I will pray with the mind also. I will sing praise with the spirit, but I will sing praise with the mind also. Otherwise, if you say a blessing with the spirit, how can anyone in the position of an outsider say the Amen to your thanksgiving, since the outsider does not know what you are saying? For you may give thanks well enough, but the other person is not built up. I thank God that I speak in tongues more than any of you. Nevertheless, in church, I'd rather speak 5 words with my mind in order to instruct others also, than 10,000 in a tongue." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Let me tell you what this passage is really about. In chapter 12, Paul talks about love gifts of the Spirit. Gifts that God gives us gifts and talents and so on. God gives us love gifts, he talks about in chapter 12. In chapter 13, he talks about the vital importance of love, which holds it all together. So in chapter 12, you've got the gifts. In chapter 13, you've got love. And in chapter 14, I think he's really telling us how it pans out, how to do it. And verse 1 hits it on the head. It says, "Pursue love, but eagerly desire spiritual gifts." And as I understand it, pursue is a very stronger word than eagerly desire. So pursue love is your number one, but also want spiritual gifts as well. And that kind of says it all. Love comes first, but also desire spiritual gifts. But then Paul goes on to talk about spiritual gifts, what we should long for, and how we should use it. So the spiritual gifts in love, what we should look for, what we should be eagerly watch, what we should be looking for, but also what we should do with them as well. That's what this passage is really all about. And he uses the illustration of the gift of tongues. Now, I almost wished he hadn't, because I think it's in danger of confusing the matter, but I'll try and put it to you like this, because some of you may not have any idea what I'm talking about. And I have to say also, over the last few years, there's been, it's got far too het up about this. People have got far too het up on both sides of the argument about this. It really isn't the big deal that they say it is. The gift of tongues is a gift that is a sort of way that some people talk to God. Okay? I do it. I've been doing it since I had an experience of God about 35 years ago. I don't know what I'm saying, but I know that sometimes when I'm praying, if I talk to God in these funny words, then it helps me and it makes me feel good. Okay? It helps me in my prayers. I do it, and helps me in my prayers. But I'm very aware, if anyone else was listening in, they'd say, what a load of gibberish, or what's he on, or what's he smoking, or whatever it would be. To me, it means something. I'm not quite sure what, but I know it means something. But to other people, I know it means utter gibberish. And actually, gifts of tongues is fine for me and it helps me. But it's much better, Paul is saying, if I can do something that builds other people up. And he makes the point so strongly. He says, I'd rather speak 5 words that help other people than 5,000 words that just build me up. And what Paul is really saying here, he's not really talking about tongues particularly. He's really talking about the importance of spiritual gifts, what we should desire and what we should do with them. The gifts we should be looking for are not just things that build me up. What he's saying is gifts in love means we should be looking for gifts that build other people up. So it's much more important for me that I can do talks like this and tell you about the Bible. It's much more important that I could say, or you and I could say, a kind word to somebody who's having a hard time. It's much more important that I could say to somebody, actually, your life's doing this. It might be better if you do it this way and turn back to God more. It's much better if I can tell somebody, help somebody in their walk with God, or pray with somebody, or encourage someone. That's much more important than a gift which just builds me up. And what Paul is saying is the gifts that we should desire, the ones that we should really value in the church, the gifts that we should want, we should want to have, the gifts we should ask God for, are the gifts that build other people up. It's really important, therefore, that we have the gift of being able to make a nice cup of tea, because that actually helps somebody else. It's really important that we have the gift of being able to put your arm around somebody when they're having a hard time and be there and listen to somebody. It's important that we have the gift of warm people who can welcome people into church. It's really important. So what Paul is saying is we should want gifts of the Spirit. We should want God to bless us. But the gifts we should earnestly want, the ones we should seek after most, are the ones that build other people up. It's fine to have gifts like tongues that help us, but it's more important to have gifts that build other people up. That's what Paul is saying. I think so that's the gifts that we should. He's also talking about what we should do with the gifts that we've got. And I really believe that there's a call here, actually, that we should use the gifts that God's given us. That we should not just keep them to ourselves, but that we should use the gifts that God's given us. So things like, if God's given you the gift of being able to sing or be musical, then I would ask you to think about playing in one of our groups or singing in one of our choirs or whatever. And if you can sing, then use the gift that God's given you, not just to help yourself in the shower, but actually to help other people in the church. If you're good with money, if you've got a gift of being able to be administration or the gifts of finance or whatever, we'd love to hear from you. Don't just do it for yourself. Actually, why not offer it in the life of the church? If you're a techie person, if you're one of these people that can understand computers and things, believe me, we'd love to hear from you. Those gifts are becoming more important in the life of the church. If you're a warm person who's very good at, if you've got a nice smile and you're good at welcoming people, that's really important. Isn't it great when you come to church on Sunday morning and a nice, warm, friendly face reaches you when you arrive at the door? So if you're that person, we'd love to hear from you as well. If you can if you're a hospitable person, we have events, if you've got that. If you're good with, fundraising or whatever, as you can imagine, we'd love to hear you with that. But what I'm saying here is, don't just use the gifts God's given you for yourself, but use the gifts for building up the church and for building up other people. So this passage in 1 Corinthians 14, it's not really an action principle about the gift of tongues, despite what I said earlier. What Paul is saying here is that we should use our gifts in love. And what it means in practice is we should seek after, we should long for and ask God for the gifts that build not just us up, but other people up as well. We should pray to God that God will bless us and bless others with the gifts that will build up the church. But also, my friends, if you have a gift, if God's blessed you with musical ability, financial ability, warmth, cooking, whatever it may be, we'd love to hear from you. Don't just keep it yourself, but offer those gifts in so that they can be used to build up the body of Christ, so that we can all work together, working at full speed on 4 cylinders. We can work